Great. So it's arguably due diligence is the most important factor in having a successful angel investment and an angel portfolio. But we're given a half hour to discuss it. It really is something we could spend 4 days discussing. But hopefully we're going to get through some key findings and what we've learned from our due diligence experience. And because of that, and because of our lack of time, we're not going to cover much of what's in the binder. It's really for your reference. I'll explain it, what's in the binder. Really, you'll notice there are some slides that had we had more time, we would have gone through. And then behind it, there is a due diligence best practices from the ACEF, which is very good, although it's several years old. There's also a Queen City Angel list of questions we run through and some explanation of why we run through it. And during our discussion, more of how we do that will come out in some of the lessons. And after my brief comments, again, we're going to go right to lessons learned. First, let me go through some very brief introductions of people. And why don't we start off with Scott Mindrum. Do you want to talk about yourself just briefly?
Hi, I'm Scott Mindrum. No, just kidding. I'm Scott Mindrum. I'm an entrepreneur and a recovering CPA. And anyway, I used to work for Ernst & Young many years ago, and then was involved in M&A for several years in various industries. Did about $1 billion worth of transactions on buy and sell side. I've had my own companies, started up and sold successfully. So I've been on both sides of the due diligence equation. So I look forward to questions on either one of those things.
Hi, I'm Dan Kincaid. I am a member of Queen City Angels and also now a serial entrepreneur in the life science space, health IT space. Like Scott, I've been through due diligence on both sides as an acquiring company, as a exiting company, and now through Queen City Angels as well.
Hi, and I'm Don McKee, and I too have been through due diligence on both sides, but on the sell side with large companies, I spent 30 years in large corporations, last several as chief financial officer. In the last 8 years, I retired from corporate America. In the last 8 years, I'm involved in Queen City Angels and made quite a few investments and spend most of my time right now coaching existing companies that we've invested in. Because a lot of what Queen City Angels does is deliver value beyond the cash, which is mentoring value and sounding board value. And I know Dan and Scott both do that, and I do that in spades with 5 companies right now. So with that brief description of how due diligence in private companies is different from, say, a stock investment you might make in a Fortune 500 company, is that there's a lot less published, and there's hardly anything published. And if it's a startup, there's nothing published on a young company or a company to be. And it's a lot riskier because more of them go out of business sooner. If you're a large Fortune 500 company, it's rather rare, or it takes a long time for it to go out of business and you can exit. But in an angel investment, the third factor is that it's almost a permanent investment. Once you make the investment, you're in until you can some liquidity event in the future. And you can't directly control that. You might have provisions in the documents that you can force the company to pay you market value at the end of 3 or 5 years. But that's never done because the company is either successful and on a track towards bigger and better things, or it's gone out of business. So you really can't intend to exercise. So that the due diligence is critically important, and as Dan Fleming said, you don't know what you don't know. Well, the due diligence process mainly uncovers more things you don't know. And so there's layers and layers of due diligence before a final investment takes place. And With that, rather than going through the slides, Dan, maybe you could move. Can you give me that slide? We're going to move right to the lessons learned by us in due diligence. In total, we've had a tremendous number of years involved in. This is the deck that we'll return to if we have more time, but I suspect we won't. Let's see here. Yeah. So there's two slides on due diligence. In your book, it's all on one page. The first ones are lessons learned in due diligence, and the second page is more general lessons learned we've come across, discovered as angel investors. And we're going to divide this up, and Scott, you're going to take the first few bullet points.
Yeah, so, I do have so really important to understand that in this role of due diligence, you're trying to mitigate risk. So risk mitigation does not equal risk elimination. There's no way you have the time or resources to examine everything, and once examined, things may change. So you're doing the best you can to look at the things that are the highest risk or the highest probability fulcrums in the deal. So you go into a deal. Again, another thing I would say is Shark Tank X. You're not in this deal to rip somebody up. Rather, you're in the deal for a relationship. So whether you're in either side of that, you need to make sure that you're behaving in a professional manner and using calm voices and looking at things, again, that are high risk, sometimes very sensitive things. You want to say, hey, you're a liar, but you don't want to do that just in case they're not really a liar, maybe more just naive or whatever. So again, trust but verify is important. You don't want to come off looking, dealing with people like the criminals. So take it easy, but have an urgent kind of agenda and get to the bottom of your questions.
Great. And to talk about the two-way process.
Yeah, so again, another kind of important thing to note here is while you're doing your due diligence as an investor, they're doing their due diligence as an investee. So if you behave unprofessionally or treat them like criminals, doubtful that they'll be wanting to do business with you. So you got to come into this thing as equals. And I think one of the things that kind of wraps all my things together is you want to get a feel for, and they're going to get a feel for who you are, who you're going to get involved with on a long-term basis. As an investor, are you just about the money, or are you also about giving advice and helping build that business into a better business? You can't do that if there's animosity. So both sides are going to be attended to. This whole process does lead to kind of a better understanding and better assessment of the CEO and the management team. One of the things we like to do when we're spending time with these folks is spend time with them outside of the business table, see what you can do to see how they behave outside of a business, maybe in a relaxed atmosphere. Kind of like to do this like at a bar, but not for what may be obvious reasons post St. Patty's Day, but rather really to see how they treat the serving staff. I've read that a long time ago, but it is true. How you treat other people who serve you is a good indication of how serious you are as a believable, or rather the propensity to kind of believe that person is important. Trusting your gut is important also, but give it more than just that first few minutes. You need to kind of spend, again, more quality time, get to know the person making really hard decisions like, am I going to have fish or steak? And understand what they do when they make those decisions. Again, it sounds funny and trite, but it really does show you decisiveness and ability to kind of know where they are and relativeness. So that's my section.
Yeah, and I find that that critical element that you spoke about of spending quite a bit of time, if you can, casual time, is very important. It's like a job interview if you're in a corporation and you're interviewing for someone who's going to report to you. It's pretty critical that you have a long dinner with them and you get into, you don't try to ask questions that are illegal and get into areas that you shouldn't. But over time, the people just tend, and over a drink or two, people will open up and you'll get to know them better. And since you're going to be working with them for a number of years, and we're going to get into usually the time horizon, it's a lot longer than most people initially think, they're going to be like your partners. And are they someone that you would enjoy working with? And certainly, are they coachable? And if they're not intelligent, don't have a great business plan, you shouldn't be sitting there to begin with.
And I would suspect. I would echo something Scott said earlier. When you're treating, or when you're with these entrepreneurs, they're doing due diligence on you. And it's not just for this deal, because they'll go back and their friends in the entrepreneurial community will say, well, gee, how's QCA to work with? How's Scott to work with? How's Dan to work with? If you're dragging them over the coals and treating them as if they're lying to you, you're not going to get the deal flow that you want. The good deals will go to people who treat those entrepreneurs better and as true partners. So that building that rapport, building that relationship becomes key to being a successful angel. The other thing with spending time with the entrepreneurs outside of the business setting is that you start to build that rapport that lets them build trust in you with your advice when you go to them and say, well, maybe we ought to think about a different way to go to market, or maybe we ought to think about a different customer segment, because here's what I'm seeing in the industry. If you've built that rapport and they see you as part of their team, you're much more likely to have an impact than if they see you as, oh God, Dan's calling again. What's wrong now?